Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be getting into the big 49ers-Chiefs preview. But first, we're going to be talking roster moves, Ricky Pearsall being back at practice, Twitter twats make their triumphant return, recent trades around the NFL, what that can mean for San Francisco, and the preview of the Super Bowl rematch. We're going to go over players, stats, rankings, injuries, how this game in a way feels like a game back in 1994. I'll explain. We'll go over the last 3 times the Niners have played the Chiefs. I'll give some keys and thoughts on the game and a prediction. Now, this is the game that we have all had circled on the calendar since the Super Bowl loss back in February. So let's get right into it. And heading into this game, the 49ers made some roster moves really only related to practice squad players. They signed kicker Anders Carlson and safety Adrian Amos. They had an opening on the practice squad. They just wound up releasing wide receiver Terrace Marshall, who was with the Panthers for the past 2 years, which was confusing to me because he's a more accomplished receiver than someone like Tariq Owens, who the 49ers brought back a week or two ago. But he is still on the roster along with Trent Taylor at wide receiver, at least the practice squad, Trent Taylor is safe because he's the de facto backup punt return if anything were to happen to Jacob Cowing. Now, the Adrian Amos signing is interesting. They're bringing a veteran safety in, again, not on the 53-man roster, but on the practice squad. And that's because rookie Malik Mustafa is coming off of a low ankle sprain. He's questionable for the game against the Chiefs, but should play. And they also have rookie undrafted free agent Jalen Mahoney out of Vanderbilt on the practice squad that they can elevate again to get a 4th safety on the roster, on the game day roster, which they're going to need if Mustafa is coming into that game with a bit of a gimpy ankle. Now, Anders Carlson is insurance in case Matthew Wright, filling in for Jake Moody, is unable to go. He's questionable. He had a separated shoulder in that tackle late in the 4th quarter on a kickoff return. That knocked him out of the game. They didn't need him at that point anyway. But once game time comes, he'll have, 9-ish days to heal. But at least they have a kicker on the practice squad that if the day before it's not looking good, they can bring Carlson up, who had a year with Green Bay last year. Not a terrible season, but at least it is someone with kicking experience. And yesterday I learned that, was it the Packers maybe, signed Brandon McManus. Remember him, longtime kicker of the Denver Broncos, was available. Not sure if he was one of the 3 kickers that the 49ers worked out. Maybe they have the names released somewhere and I just didn't see it. If that's the case, I apologize. But to bring someone in like Matthew Wright or even Anders Carlson as someone on the practice squad, neither one of those kickers have a big leg. You saw with Matthew Wright last Thursday night at Seattle, I think only one of those kickoffs found its way into the end zone for a touchback. Anders Carlson, I think only about 40% of his kickoffs last year were touchbacks. When you compare that to Jake Moody, who's obviously hurt, over 80% of his kickoffs have resulted in touchbacks. So the field position game and special teams, which is such an issue for the 49ers, it's obviously laughable at this point, is going to take a hit, this week and next. I'm sure Moody will probably be back, right? I shouldn't say I'm sure. It feels like Moody will be back after the bye. So you have to get through the Chiefs game, the Cowboy game, then you have the bye, then you're at Tampa Bay coming off the bye with either Wright or Carlson as your kicker. So now additional injury news or non-football injury list news. Rookie receiver Ricky Pearsall is back at practice. They have opened his 21-day window. Does not mean he is guaranteed to play against the Chiefs. In fact, I would highly doubt that he plays against the Chiefs. Can't imagine him being activated. Maybe next week against Dallas. And a lot can go into that, right? How the offense looks against Kansas City. Is there an injury? Is someone in the 5 or 6 receivers ahead of him turn an ankle? Does someone miss a game and they need to maybe bring him along to fill a wide receiver spot? But carrying 2 kickers on the roster with Moody and Matthew Wright at the moment, they are at their full 53. So if they activate Ricky Pearsall, they're going to have to release somebody, which is why in some instances, assuming the wide receiver core is healthy for these next 2 games, Pearsall maybe comes back after the bye, because then Moody's back, I would imagine, right? You release Matthew Wright and Pearsall takes that spot on the 53. But if they push the issue with Pearsall to next week at Dallas, or Moody's not ready that first game after the bye, someone's going to need to be released. And I know the outcry is going to be for Ronnie Bell, right? Wide receiver, which is entirely possible. Why carry? I don't think there's ever been a time in Kyle's tenure here where he's had 7 wide receivers on the active roster. That seems obscenely too many. So you could see Bell going, maybe a Chris Conley if Kyle has more of an infatuation with Bell than Conley. He certainly did against the Rams, which is one of the reasons why they lost that game. That big drop by Bell late in the fourth quarter around the Rams, 20-yard line. So maybe one of the receivers goes, thinking that either one of them could be signed to the practice squad. Maybe someone like Braden Willis at tight end. He was an interesting elevation because they brought him up. What was it? Going into last week or maybe the week before, when Kittle was questionable. It might have been before this past game against Seattle, just to make sure that, say, Kittle got hurt or wasn't able to go against Seattle, they had 3 tight ends on the roster. Kittle is still questionable with some sort of ribs injury or questionable designation there, but he doesn't offer anything in terms of really blocking or receiving. He's just a guy. He's just a body that they needed to fill a tight end roster spot, but he could go. And of course, I mentioned someone like, Matthew Wright, if Moody's healthy after the bye. So Pearsall close to returning. I don't anticipate being this week. Maybe a 50-50 chance next week against Dallas, but probably makes most sense to really ramp him up these next couple weeks practice-wise and come back after the bye at Tampa Bay, who's is shown themselves to be a very formidable and explosive team. Now, the Twitter twats, I want to say they're back, but they've never really gone anywhere. It's always, to me, been how egregious was the tweet by the twat that warrants recognition here on the podcast. Now, I'm not going to give the names of any of these morons that are Niner fans, and I hate to call Niner fans or, our brethren, or is it sistren? Is that even a word? If it's a female person making this comment, and it's not, these are all males based on their profile pics, assuming they're not catfishing. It's hard, or cruel in a way to call fellow Niner fans morons, but there are people that are morons. I mean, there's, the famous George Carlin saying, think about how dumb the average person is, right? Stupid things, absent-minded, just not intelligent. And then half of the population is even dumber than that. And you have that to an exponential degree on Twitter. Are there some well-informed people and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, social media as a whole? Of course. I'm just blessed, I guess, by seeing idiots in my feed more than probably I want to. But at the same time, I do, follow a bunch of Niner fans. And the more you follow, the better chance that there's a couple rotten or mouth-breathing apples in the bunch. And here's the first. And listen, the first couple you guys may disagree with, and that's okay. This is just a pump the brakes exercise, right? So the people maybe not are not, they're excitable morons, overly excitable morons. And let's begin with Isaac Guerendo. Quote, "Trust me, Isaac Guerendo is going to be a baller." Now, I guarantee you this Twitter twat would not have posted this if Guerendo did not have that one big 76-yard run against Seattle where he was asked to do nothing special at all. Actually found the hole quickly and ran sort of straight through the hole and down the sidelines. And this discussion of, did he get caught on purpose? Did the sideline tell him to go down? Whatever. He got caught by Devin Witherspoon, who's fast also. Guerendo probably doesn't play to his 40-yard dash speed, at least my interpretation or perception of it right now. But that post would not have been made without that 1-yard run. Now, and guess what? Both at that point in the game, he was 8 carries for 24 yards. Then he had that run. Then he lost a yard once they got near the 10, or he got tackled to the 6 or whatever it may have been. So that game, without that 76-yard run, 9 for 23, that's less than 3 yards a carry. Trust me, bro, he's going to be a baller, bro. Going into that game, 12 carries for 41 yards, a little over 3 yards a carry. On the season, 22 for 140. That's a 6.4 yard average. But again, if he had 140 yards, or if he has 140 yards on the year, 76 came on one run. He looks indecisive and slow getting to or through the hole. Does anyone listening or watching think that he runs with the same explosive fire that Jordan Mason runs? And I guarantee you, if they ran a foot race 100 times, Isaac Guerendo would win. But that straight line speed does not matter unless you have a straight line into the end zone. And it's still, in a way, sort of didn't matter against Seattle because he was still tracked down by Devin Witherspoon. I still like the pick. I think he adds an interesting blend of power and speed to complement Mason's initial burst through the hole and his aggressive running ability, and also Kyle Shanahan's bromance with Christian McCaffrey in terms of being a dual threat running back. What I go back to, and listen, I'm hoping Guerendo has a nice career. Maybe he doesn't get a second contract with San Francisco, but a good second or third option right now, third option behind McCaffrey and Mason. But what I still don't understand is if Kyle Shanahan prefers a dual threat running back, and we're going back to when Jerick McKinnon was signed, whenever that was, 2018, 2019, blew out his knee, missed 2 years, and did actually play in some games for San Francisco. Why have they not attempted in the draft to get a dual threat running back? Instead, you're bringing in Trey Sermon, you're bringing in Ty Davis-Price, and you're bringing in Isaac Guerendo. Those are not dual threat running backs, and the first two completely flamed out. And I'm not saying that or hoping that for Guerendo. The closest they've had, honestly, was Matt Breida, undrafted rookie free agent. Jordan Mason has proven himself well, undrafted rookie free agent. They drafted Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round. He unfortunately can't stay healthy. We all know it's the same song and dance with the Shanahan family. They have a better hit record of finding running backs late than early. But why are they not doubling down on the style of running back, or at least Kyle, that he needs to unlock this offense? Will anybody that was drafted this year, meaning in 2024 or last year, as a dual threat back, hold a candle to McCaffrey? No. But when McCaffrey's gone, there's a good amount of the playbook from a running back standpoint that goes with him, that someone else that has that type of ability, even if it's 50% of that ability, because Sermon didn't have it, Davis-Price didn't have it, Guerendo doesn't have it, Mason doesn't have it, Mitchell doesn't have, but is more comfortable as a receiver, would serve this offense better. And you're going to keep three running backs active on game day. And if that third one is Mason or someone like a Guerendo as more of like a thumper, fine. But man, are they choosing early the wrong style of running back for what Kyle wants to do. Now, Twat number 2, another rookie. And again, this is like, everyone chill. Quote, Renardo Green is going to be our next All-Pro. No doubt in my mind. Why? Because he had an interception? Nice play. Undercut the route that DK Metcalf ran, and Geno Smith is Geno Smith and threw that interception. But he's going to be our next All-Pro, bro. Trust me, bro, because of one pick. How about the fact that he gave up the touchdown to Tyler Lockett at the end of the game to make it 29-24? That was on Renardo Green. How about the fact that Green had less than 10 snaps, might have been less than 5 snaps the game before against Arizona? Now, listen, rookies are, you would assume, right, are going to grow from beginning of the season, a third, midway point, 2/3 through the end of the season. More experience, generally speaking, younger players are going to get better. And maybe this is the turning point for someone like Renardo Green or someone like Isaac Guerendo. But it's okay to get excited about plays, Guerendo's 76-yard run, or Green's interception. He also got called for holding or pass interference that game, or it might have been the Cardinal game, or maybe both. I don't recall. It's okay to get excited, but it's also okay to pump the brakes and be a little level-headed. Twitter, X, social media is not the place for logic, common sense, and even-keeled thinking. I get it, because there's no repercussions. You can say the stupidest thing in the world. You could be a celebrity. You could be a politician, an athlete, an average Joe Schmo. You could say whatever you want. Is someone going to punch you through your screen or slap the shit out of you because you're so stupid through your screen? Of course not. I'm excited by the rookie class. And even Malik Mustafa, I didn't see anybody post anything about him about being the next Ronnie Lott or some absurd statement. Good showing. Had an interception against Seattle. He got teased by Fred Warner and others for running out of bounds instead of taking it up the sideline. His momentum looked like he was taking him there, but I guess he could have made a little bit more of a concerted effort to stop and get upfield. It's okay to get excited by these rookies. Dominic Pooney also having a great start to the year. 6 games in. It's okay to pump the brakes also. And I'm not trying to tell anybody you should be a Debbie Downer or even whatever, but it just too much too soon, right? We don't need to crown anybody anything. Just enjoy the fact and be pleased by the fact that these players are growing. Now, one more Twitter twat. After the Adrian Amos signing, they should have signed to Sean Gibson instead of Amos. Now, I'm sure there's not a lot of people out here that are aware of this, but Tayshaun Gibson with the Niners the past couple of years was suspended the first 6 games, 5 or 6. I believe it's 6 games due to substance abuse issue or performance enhancements, something. Don't quote me on it, but was suspended. Was a free agent during the offseason, signed with the Jaguars mid-August. Been with the Jaguars since. Been on their exempt list. Should have signed Tayshaun Gibson instead of Adrian Amos. And, I'm sure not 100% of Niner fans knew that. But when you make that statement and you are on Twitter as much, posting about the Niners and reading stuff about if you're posting and you're scrolling, you're reading too, right? I'm not going to assume that people are going to ESPN or other more reliable sources to get football or 49er information than Twitter. But if you're on that much and posting that much, reading that much about the team, you would have known Tayshaun Gibson is signed with the Jaguars. Again, you could post whatever you want on social media, and I really barely use my social media for anything. I'm not posting about my kids or my family or what I'm doing or what I'm eating or if I had a good bowel movement, whatever. It's all horseshit. I'll post about the podcast if I have a new topic to talk about. That's kind of how I use it. Otherwise, social media is whatever for me. But there's no social media. Well, actually, there is like a Twitter police in terms of some stuff, fact checking and whatnot. But I love, you know what, though? Keep it coming. Dumb people, Twitter twats, keep it coming. Gives me a little bit more content to talk about every week. Now let's get off the twats and that's funny to say, and into trades. So as you guys know, a couple trades In the NFL, the big ones, Devontae Adams going to the Jets, Amari Cooper going to the Bills. And it's just interesting that those two teams that played on Monday night both made a play for a wide receiver. Even the Seahawks got in on the mix. The Jaguars season has basically gone south from the get-go. Seattle acquired defensive tackle Roy Robertson Harris from the Jaguars to help shore up that D-line. The Adams trade, and I know this is a Niner podcast, but just think about this. Everything that the Jets have done in the past week plus since Robert Saleh has been fired, Robert Saleh could have done, right? He could have demoted Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator. They could have traded for Devontae Adams sooner. Did the offense look a little bit better without Hackett calling the plays? Yeah. But does it take a rocket scientist to know that you should be giving Breece Hall 20 plus touches a game? Anybody that plays Madden, anybody that plays fantasy football knows that, which means Nathaniel Hackett is even more of an idiot and bad offensive coordinator than his father was. But with these trades, and the Amari Cooper trade, not to go so over, I think it was a good trade for the Bills. He's not under contract beyond this year. They can extend him if he wants. He's, I think, 30 or 31. So he's probably not going to command. Well, you never know with agents, not going to command a deal like what Ayuk got for $30 million. It doesn't seem to be the complete bitch diva that Stephon Diggs is. So he might be a better fit in Buffalo. But both teams, a little bit of a offensive arms race in the AFC East. And Buffalo, with that trade happening after the Adams trade, wanting to either, I don't say keep pace with the Jets, but help out their offense a little bit more. Now, seeing these trades, and everybody's like, well, what about the Niners? You know, why don't the Niners go after Max Crosby? The Raiders suck. They traded Adams. They benched Gardner Minshew for Aiden O'Connell. Like they're, you know, what about them or Hassan Reddick? And the Jets gave Hassan Reddick and his agent permission to seek a trade. But again, people are not kind of doing the research because if the Jets, I can't believe this was actually part of the trade stipulation. If the Jets trade Reddick to an NFC team, they owe the Eagles a second round pick. Who in their right mind, have we ever heard of a trade where one team's trading for another player and that team that let the player go says to the other team, oh, and by the way, if you trade him again, we get a pick. Usually a trade happens. They play with that team throughout the rest of the season. And Reddick, and the fact they didn't have a contract in place with Reddick is ridiculous anyway. But now they're, Josina Anderson and others, oh, he should, they should trade him to the Niners. The Jets aren't going to give another pick to the Eagles. If he gets traded, it'll be to the AFC. And I don't know what that compensation, if it's a third or a fourth, but the fact that you acquire a player, Jets, and then you want to trade him and you would owe additional compensation to Philadelphia, and it might be a wash. Whatever pick you get from Team X might just go right to Philadelphia. It might not matter just to get Hassan Reddick away from your facility or away from associated with your team. It might be worth it. But isn't that weird that was actually worked into the language of the trade? But people, Max Crosby, Hassan Reddick. Listen, Detroit needs a DN too. Poor Aiden Hutchinson. If you guys have seen that injury on slow-mo, that game against Dallas, like his leg whipped around and snapped. Like you can just see the bone. It was bad. And Dan Campbell leaving out there like, oh, Hutchinson may heal fast. It's not out of the realm of possibility he comes back this year. He's not coming back this year. They put a rod in his leg. He is not, I don't care if they make the Super Bowl. I don't care if the Super Bowl was played in March. He's not coming back this year. Let's stop with the whole Aaron Rodgers nonsense of, well, maybe this player can come back. Like you're basically jerking your fans off and you're ultimately going to give them blue balls because Rodgers didn't come back and he came out after the season saying, yeah, there was no way I was going to be able to play. But that was just to give Jet fans hope because let's be honest, all the Jet fans have had for the past 50 years is hope, nothing really else to show for it, but doing the same thing for Detroit. Detroit's a good enough team where, 5-1, I don't think they need to say something like that. It's setting up an unrealistic expectation that's going to let fans down. Hutchinson is not playing this year. I'm not a doctor, but Jesus Christ, he's not. And now let's get back to trades. San Francisco has made acquisitions the past several years, right? Last year, twice doubling down on DN. Started out with Randy Gregory, then traded with the Commanders for Chase Young. Before that, obviously, McCaffrey came over, Charles Omenihu, Trent Williams, Emmanuel Sanders. They have a long and consistent history of bringing a player in. I can see them, and this can go a couple different ways, right? If they feel like they're one player away and that player becomes available in the next couple of weeks, whenever the trade deadline is, it's around Halloween, right? Or the week after, then they're going to pull the trigger on it. They don't have an excess of draft picks in the 2025 draft upcoming. I think they only have 7. I'm not sure what they're if they're getting any extra thirds for any minority hires for coaching, but right now they're slated to have 7. If they feel like they are a player away, a D tackle, a D end, corner, I can't imagine that anything on the offensive side of the ball, that they'll pull the trigger. Or if they feel like a player will give them a boost, say they drop both to Kansas City and Dallas, and they're 3-5 going into the break. Remember, they were 3-5 a couple years ago, hosting the Rams on Monday Night Football in Santa Clara, and they beat the Rams, and that propelled them to the NFC Championship game at Los Angeles, in which they lost. So I think the door is wide open. I don't think the Niners are going to look at this and go, oh, we're a middling team, so let's not. There's two, like 4-4 or 5-4 at some point, and they decide not to pull the trigger on a trade. I think it's going to happen, just a matter of who's available at a position of either need or want, or someone that can actually make an impact for a player. But then, when I mentioned if they feel like they're a player away, are those players, though, currently on IR? McCaffrey's coming back. Greenlaw's coming back. At some point, Hufunga's coming back. Feliciano is coming back. And as a backup, and then they'd have to probably release someone on the O-line, but they have 3 starters and Yetur Gross-Matos. Important rotational edge that plays the run really well. And they, you can never have enough pass rushers. They have 4 starting caliber players coming back between now and, let's say, mid to end of November. And Pearsall, 5. No, he's not a starter, but maybe the player they're looking for is actually on the roster already, and it's not going to be acquired via trade. But Lynch and company do have a history of pulling the trigger. Not trading away, they have, but significantly more bringing someone in versus letting somebody go. So that brings us to the preview of the game that we have all had circled. I'm not going to say since the Super Bowl, because we didn't know that they were going to play, but since the schedule release in April, Kansas City at San Francisco, 4:25 Eastern on Fox. It is, if you are in the New York, New Jersey area, it is on nationally televised TV. Based on where you go, DraftKings, otherwise, either the Niners are favored by a point and a half, or the Chiefs are favored by a point and a half. Does it matter? No. And I think Trent Williams put it best when he said, we can't get revenge on the Super Bowl. That ship has sailed. So this is another game on the schedule. Yeah, it'll be great to beat them. Fred Warner saying, hey, we haven't beaten them since I've been here. Was it either Mustafa or Jacob Cowing? One of those said, this is another team that's in our way. So I like that the Rooks are having some confidence. It is another game. It's a game to get above 500. It's a game to either keep pace or stay a game ahead of Seattle, who is at Atlanta this week. So a very winnable game for the Falcons. In fact, I may start Kirk Cousins in fantasy. But make no mistake about it, this is a huge game mentally for this team, right? Even if it wasn't the Chiefs, but it was a 5-1 team, 5-0 or a 5-1 team coming in. Chiefs are undefeated. To show that they could beat a good team, right? They beaten the Jets, they beaten the Patriots, and they beaten the Seahawks, who was above 500 before playing San Francisco and is now 500. I wouldn't necessarily say they are a good team. because they've beaten bad teams and they've lost to bad teams. To beat a good team after what the first 6 games have looked like would be huge. The fact that it could be Kansas City that they beat makes it even bigger because they are right now the ultimate hurdle. Listen, the Niners may not get to the Super Bowl. They might not get to the NFC Championship game. The Chiefs might not get to the Super Bowl. But when they've been there with Kyle, this is the team that they can't beat. And this could be a springboard for the rest of the season with Dallas coming up. And even though they look like crap against Detroit, still a dangerous team. Tampa Bay coming out of the bye, looking good. And then you have teams later on, like the Bears, Seattle again, the Rams beat them already. The Cardinals beat them already. There's not a ton of, or I said last podcast, any games where you look at and go, yeah, that's a win. The Niners might be favored in maybe all of these games, but I wouldn't look at that and be comfortable putting, a couple $100 down saying that's an absolute win. Mentally, this could be the springboard game that San Francisco needs. Unfortunately, it's just against a team that they haven't beaten in quite a while. And you're doing it, like I said before, without McCaffrey and Greenlaw and Hufanga and Hargrave. I forgot him earlier. Sorry about that. And Yatir Gross-Matos and Ricky Pearsall. You may not have Malik Mustafa. So you're missing right off the bat 4 starters, potentially a 5th with Yator. And the Chiefs are banged up, right? There's no Isaiah Pacheco. There's no Rashee Rice. There's no Hollywood Brown. So they're missing, 2 of their top 3 wide receivers. But the Chiefs have powered through and they're 5-0, of course, led by 15, Patrick Mahomes. This year, 70% completion rate, averaging 247 passing yards a game, a very pedestrian 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. But his O-line has kept him clean, only 9 sacks through 5 games. The running game has been turned over to Kareem Hunt. They just seems like they always release him and then they bring him back, some point during the season because they have injuries. And he's run it 41 times for $171 and a touchdown. So that's over 4 yards a carry. Rookie Carson Steele, 33 for 117. And they may have Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been activated. He might not be activated to the game day roster, but he is an option at receiver. They also have Samaje Perine at receivers or people catching the ball. Of course, it's Kelsey leading the way. Slow start to the year, 24 for 228. So he's averaging almost 5 catches per game. Rookie Xavier Worthy, 21 for 179 and 2 touchdowns. And Juju Smith-Schuster, 12 for 147 and a touchdown. Make no mistake, they do not have all their playmakers, right? But an offensive core of Mahomes, Hunt, Kelsey, Worthy, and Smith-Schuster is not terrible. It is not bad by any means. And it might be just as good as what they had last year in some. Maybe not, maybe close to it, a close 85 to 90% approximation. And that was a team that won the Super Bowl. Let's go to the defense. It starts on the line with Chris Jones. He has wreaked havoc in both 49ers Super Bowls. Defensive end George Karlaftis, linebacker Nick Bolton, cornerback Trent McDuffie, and strong safety Justin Reed. The parts are good, especially when you have an all-pro like Chris Jones. But this is a team unlike San Francisco, where the sum is greater than the individual parts. Individually, the 49ers have more talent on defense than the Chiefs. They do. But I'm going to take the Chiefs defense coached by Steve Spagnuolo over the Niners defense coached by Sorensen any day of the week. But it's a defense also that they've given up 9 sacks, but they've only gotten 9 sacks. And Chris Jones only has 3. Doesn't mean he can't have a 3-sack performance against San Francisco. And a defense losing cornerback L'Jarius Sneed, has only garnered 2 interceptions. This is still, I'm not saying that this is a pushover defense by any means, but they can be had, right? This is not an all-world generational defense by any means. Now let's look at the offensive and defensive stats overall. 11th overall on offense, averaging 355 a game, 9th passing, 16th rushing, going for 118 yards a game, and 15th points scored, 23.6. So somewhat middle of the pack offensively, but they have Patrick Mahomes, who is the ultimate equalizer and then some on the football field, right? It's not about numbers alone. Defense overall, 9th, giving up 305 a game, 20th against the pass, allowing 217, top 5, 5th against the run, allowing 88 yards per game, and 6th in points, allowing 17 points a game. Turnovers, the Chiefs have been a bit sloppy. In total, they are -4 in the turnover differential. San Francisco is +3. Let's look at injuries for the Chiefs coming off of a bye. Obviously, they have some players like Charles Omenihu who are out, and we talked about Pacheco and Rice and Hollywood Brown, etc. But of players that have not been ruled out for weeks, it's just defensive end Mike Dana, who's questionable. For San Francisco, all of the following players are questionable: Jordan Mason, Jordan Elliott, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Charvarius Ward, Malik Mustafa, and kicker Matthew Wright. I believe everybody but Wright will probably play. And it's surprising that Charvarius Ward is still questionable since he was very close to playing. They had him warming up a couple hours before the game against Seattle, and he wasn't able to go. So the fact that he's still carrying a questionable designation versus probable is interesting. Mustafa with the low ankle sprain, Elliott with the knee, and Mason with the shoulder. Hopefully, and I hate to say this because it's not my body, but I wonder between the natural healing, how much Mason has progressed and how violent of a runner he is, if they will shoot that shoulder up and numb it for the game. I don't know. And Matthew Wright, we'll see if he's able to kick or if it's Anders Carlson. As we all know, the Chiefs have won all 4 against Kyle, starting in 2018, 19, 2022 regular season in Santa Clara, and obviously the Super Bowl last year. And Andy Reid, extremely good, coming off of a bye, 21-4. So the Niners, obviously, you guys know this, have their hands full. They're a 3-3 team. The Niners are going to have their hands full essentially with anybody in the NFL, the way they've played so far. And as much as Seattle might have been a turning point for them, I want everybody to remember that game was 29-24 with less than 2 minutes to go after Tyler Lockett scored the touchdown to make it a 5-point game. And at that point in the game, the Niners were 3-0 in the turnover differential. They were +3 over Seattle. And still that game came down to the last minute 50 and Guerendo breaking off that long run, and then Juszczyk 2 plays later taking it into the end zone. When you're winning the turnover battle by 3 and not turning it over yourself, usually games aren't that close. And yes, they won by 12 with that late touchdown. But that's, if you want to use the word surprising or eye-opening, or still shows that this Niner team has a lot of work to do. And any 3-3 team does. And you have the Super Bowl champs coming in. I hesitate to call them the world champs. Like, they didn't play anybody in Europe or Africa. Like, even NBA champs, you're not world champs. Olympic champs are world champs. Just a nomenclature thing that bothers me. But in the beginning of the season, I had this thought about this game, and I think it still holds true now. And then I'm going to expand upon it after I talk about this. This feels like, for those of you who remember, the 1992, 93, and 94 seasons for San Francisco against the Dallas Cowboys. The Niners had a really good team. This is coming off of trading Joe Montana to the Chiefs, Steve Young taking over. Young winning MVP honors in 92 and 94, and still lost 3 straight times to Dallas, hosting the 1992 NFC Championship game, losing by 10, going to Dallas in the regular season in 93, losing there, and the 1993 NFC Championship game, going back to Dallas and losing there. Made wholesale changes, which the Niners didn't really do that offseason, bringing in Gary Plummer and Ken Norton from the Cowboys, drafted Lee Woodall and William Floyd at fullback, and Bryant Young at defensive tackle. And of course, Deion Sanders, signing him as a free agent from the Falcons. So the Niners loaded up for Dallas. I can't really say that they did anything in the offseason where they loaded up again for anything against the Lions or the Packers or Eagles or Cowboys, anybody in the NFC or the Chiefs, at least the way it's panning out now with Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott at D tackle, Leonard Floyd and Yatir Gross-Matos at defensive end, and obviously getting some good contributions from the rookie class. But 94 rolls around after 3 straight losses. They beat Dallas at home in November. I was really wondering if it was going to be the same weekend in October, because I do believe in signs, but it wasn't. It was about 4 weeks later in October, won 21-14, regular season at San Francisco, forced Troy Aikman into 3 interceptions, 2 by Merton Hanks, 1 by Deion Sanders. And I don't, for those of you that maybe weren't old enough or were and lived on the East Coast or didn't see the game, that I remember that game was not on national television. I remember watching the ticker at the bottom of the 4 o'clock games and then watching NFL primetime to confirm that the Niners beat Dallas. Dallas got up 7-0. The Niners went up then 21-7. Dallas scored, in the fourth quarter, make it 21-14, and the Niners held them off. How big that game was for that team, right? Because that's the team they couldn't get over. And they did. And it was one game, but it was also a game that helped San Francisco clinch home field advantage. So they hosted Dallas again later that year in the NFC Championship game and beat them 38-28 en route to beating the Chargers in the Super Bowl, which was basically an afterthought. The number of times I've rewatched that NFC Championship game, I might have watched that game more than any other. Me being a teenager at the time and just wanting to beat Dallas so badly and not seeing it with my own eyes in the regular season, right? They won. And it actually happening in the playoffs. Such a big memory, and one that I still carry. I don't want to say I think about a lot, but just when when they play Dallas next week, I'll think about that game again because it had such an impact on me as a young fan. We have the parallel. They've lost. I mean, it's technically 4 straight, but if you don't want to count 2018, that's the game where they went out to Kansas City. Jimmy tore his ACL, and the Niners were just not a good team at that point. 2019 Super Bowl, 2022 regular season, 2023 Super Bowl. But I'm actually going to go a step further, and I'm going to keep this Niner Dallas dynamic going. After winning the Super Bowl in 1995, the Niners go to Dallas in the regular season. Big underdogs. They were 5-4 at the time. Dallas was 8-1. They go into that game. Steve Young was hurt and out. Wide receiver John Taylor hurt and out. They lost Ricky Williams in free agency to, was it Philadelphia or Seattle? One of those two, I forget. So you're rolling in with your replacements, Elvis Grbac at quarterback, J.J. Stokes at wide receiver, which is one of the worst jersey purchases I've ever made, and Derek LaVille at running back. First possession offensively, Rice takes a slant from Grbac, 81 yards to the house. Next possession for Dallas, Merton Hanks, one of my favorite all-time 49er players, returns a fumble for a touchdown. The Niners got up 24-0 in the first half, which made it an eerily similar game to the NFC Championship game where they got up 21-0 in the first quarter. The Niners win that game 38-20, but wind up losing in the divisional round to Green Bay. A beat-up 49er team. And remember, the Cowboys got Deion Sanders that year. And the Niners did knock out Troy Aikman, but that was after the game was essentially over. But a banged up 49er team beating one of, if not the best team in the league at that time, granted at Dallas instead of at San Francisco. That Niner Cowboy rivalry is so rich and storied. And obviously we've had playoff games since then in Dallas, in San Francisco, with Kaepernick, with Jimmy, with Brock. But there were some interesting parallels there that I've thought to. And I'm not like reaching for anything like, oh, since they beat Dallas to beat Kansas City. I'm not doing that. It's just a little bit of storytelling that I just wanted to share, especially for maybe some of the younger fans that weren't alive. And this is the 30th anniversary of that Super Bowl team. Now, let's get back to the more relevant last 3 games against the Chiefs. Yes, the Niners blew 10-point leads in all of the game. In the Super Bowl, they had a 10-point lead midway through the fourth quarter. In 2022, in San Francisco, they were up 10-0. And in the Super Bowl this past year, they were up 10-0. A 10-0 lead outside of super late in the fourth quarter means nothing in the NFL. I know it's a great stat that people want to throw around. 10 points is really nothing. If you're up 10 with less than 2 minutes to go, yeah, and you below that, that's horrible. You're up 10 with 5 minutes to go in the first quarter. Yeah, you'd rather be up 10 than down 10, but is that really, it's nothing, especially against a team and a quarterback and a coach the caliber of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. But let's go through those games. You're going to see a couple commonalities. The Super Bowl, turnovers were even, 2-2. This was the 31-20 in 2019. Kansas City had a 5.5 minute time of possession. The Niners, 20 of 31 passing, 22 rushes for 141 yards and 1 touchdown, 6 yards per carry. Again, not sure why Kyle got away from the run in the second half, and specifically the last 4 plays, which were pass, turnover on downs near midfield. Chiefs, 26 of 42 passing, 29 for 129 and 2 touchdowns. They ran it for 4 yards to carry. So in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs, that first Super Bowl, the Chiefs outran the 49ers, at least in terms of attempts, 29-22. Okay. 2022 game in Santa Clara, which was 14-13 at the half. Chiefs. Remember, Jimmy threw an interception in the end zone, the Chiefs end zone, with less than 2 minutes to go in the half, or else maybe that game is a little bit closer. 3 turnovers for the Niners, 2 for the Chiefs. Chiefs had a 7.5 minute time of possession advantage. The Niners were 29-46 passing, 21 rushes for 101 yards. The Chiefs were 25 of 36 passing, 21 rushes for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns. All right, so the teams are even running the ball. Niners threw it 46 times, ran it 21 times. And as the game got away from San Francisco in the second half, yes, you needed to pass to stay in it. Yes, if Jimmy doesn't throw that interception at the end of the first half, maybe they're a more balanced team in the second half. But what we know in these 2 games, 2019 and 2022, they got outrushed by the Chiefs. Time of possession was in the Chiefs' favor by 5.5 and 7.5 minutes, respectively, and they lost both games by 11 or more. This past Super Bowl, obviously 25-22 in overtime. Teams had 2 turnovers apiece. San Francisco actually had, playing in overtime, a full overtime period, a 2-minute advantage of time of possession. Okay. Niners were 24 of 39 passing, 31 rushes for $110. Kansas City, 34 of 46 passing, 30 rushes for 130 yards. Mahomes by himself, leading rusher of the Chiefs, 9 for 66. McCaffrey, huge game. He had the fumble. First drive, 22 rushes for 80 yards, 8 receptions for 80 yards, and a touchdown. Again, though, the Niners passed it 39 times and ran it 31 times for less than 4 yards to carry, about 3.5 yards to carry. And the Chiefs outrushed them in total. Niners 31 for $110, Chiefs 30 for 130. Closer game, though, right? Overtime. Niners had a chance in the fourth quarter to put it away, potentially. If they had converted fourth down, they did. They had to settle for a 50-plus yard Moody field goal. And in overtime, even if they had scored that touchdown, wouldn't have mattered. Chiefs would have gotten a possession. And do you really think you're going to stop Mahomes and the Chiefs when they have, even with the field goal, right? They're going to have 4 downs every time they need it to get a first down. But we're seeing, and this is the most recent game, the most recent reflection of the teams and rosters and quarterbacks, that the Niners control the ball more. They make it a closer game. It's not going to guarantee anything, guys. You could say, well, if that's the case, they should run it 40 times and pass it 20 times. That's not the recipe. The recipe is mid-30s rushing, high 20s, low 30s passing is where Shanahan and this team has, I don't want to say an advantage, but a better win-loss percentage than when they're going over 30 passes. Food for thought. Now, keys and thoughts to the game. Yes, this Chiefs team is 5-0. Have they looked like world beaters? They beat the Ravens opening night in a week 1 game is just a toss-up in a way because teams haven't established who they are, their identities yet, right? They beat a bad Bengals team, an okay Falcons team, an okay Chargers team, and an okay Saints team. The first 4 games outside of the Saints were all 1-possession games. They beat the Saints by 2 possessions, and that game was relatively close throughout, and Derek Carr wound up getting knocked out. Didn't he get knocked out of that game? He missed last game. And the Saints just aren't, Dennis Allen coaching, just aren't a very good team. So, and the Niners are 3-3, and everyone, famously, was it Herm Edwards or Bill Parcells, whatever, like, you are what your record says you are. The Niners are a 3-3 team. They are an average team right now. So they are along the lines of the types of teams that the Chiefs have beaten. But you could say they are a more talented team than the Bengals, the Falcons, the Chargers, or the Saints, and maybe on par with the Ravens from a talent standpoint. Pass defense. I know they're not going to do this, but I'm just going to bring it up. If he plays, and I'm surprised he's still questionable, what about putting Charvarius Ward on Travis Kelce all game? I don't know what that does to your defense. He's an outside corner. You're asking him to play sort of in the slot or near a linebacker position. But can they please maybe... So, all right, let's extrapolate that out. If Ward's on Kelce, that means you're going to have Demo on Juju Smith-Schuster and rookie on Ricky, Renardo Green on Xavier Worthy. And the reason why I brought that up is, one, Kelce's obviously their biggest passing threat, right? And Ward, even though he's not having a great season so far and he's coming off of a knee injury, is theoretically your best cornerback. And he has more size than Diamador Lenore. So let's put, for this discussion, theoretical discussion, let's put Ward on Travis Kelce. And here's the other reason why. They still have the same issue that they're going to have, or that they had in the Super Bowl. No Dre Greenlaw, right? If people want to believe, and I'm not necessarily one of them, that Dre Greenlaw playing all game would have changed the outcome or shut Kelce down. I don't believe that, because the Niners don't really play man up much on tight ends. They still play zone. If anybody, it's going to be Fred Warner, and they still had Fred Warner there, and they didn't flop with Oren Burks or DFF at the time to put Warner more over Kelce and have another linebacker playing the middle linebacker position. So you have the same problem. I don't know how they're not going to put Ward on Kelce. I don't know how you solve it. You're not going to solve it with, I don't think, Jair Brown on Kelce, or playing a 3 safety look. If it's Odom or Mustafa or Jalen Mahoney, and I don't think Adrian Amos is going to be ready. I don't know how you solve that, but he is the player you need to take away. Going into it, I think we all know that. He hasn't had a great start to the season, averaging about 5 catches per game. You need to take him away before anyone else. I don't know what's Nick Sorensen or Kyle or Brandon Staley, what they're going to have dialed up, but it can't be, especially against Patrick Mahomes, it can't be the same old bullshit of we're going to rush for 95% of the time and make you beat us downfield with 7 behind, because even though they're missing 2 of their top 3 receivers, Juju will get open. Kelsey will get open. Xavier Worthy will get open. Sky Moore will get open. Mahomes will pick the zone apart. And the Chiefs line is good enough that they will withstand the Niners' four-man rush relatively easily. Now, do we want to bring, just because the refs is a thing, Chiefs getting the benefit of the doubt of holding calls, that has been a thing, and having been the beneficiary against the Bengals of a pass interference call that probably shouldn't have been made, in which case the Bengals might have won that game. They are going to be battling the refs to some degree. I'm going to say a small degree, but to some degree. And I hope Kyle and others are in, Nick Bosa are in the refs' ears pregame saying, hey guys, this is a team that in 2 Super Bowls against us has not been called for a holding call. And we have one of the best D lines in the league. Can you guys take a look at that, please? Because that is absurd, right? And the Chiefs are obviously the favored sons. They're going to get some calls by the NFL, but not nearly to the point where people think it's a conspiracy or etc. But the Niners have to leave no doubt and get there. And you know what? Mahomes hasn't seen a lot of blitzing out of this team. Send it at his ass, right? Give him a different look. They're going to be preparing for the same old cover 3. Did we see any wrinkles against Seattle and Geno Smith? No. Why? Because Geno Smith is Geno Smith. And they can beat the Seahawks playing with a 4-man rush, air quotes, because they're not exactly, 31 pressures last week. But again, I go back to, did it really seem like Geno Smith was under attack for the vast majority of the game? No. He made stupid Geno Smith plays that he does against the 49ers. Mahomes has thrown interceptions against the 49ers the past 3 times they've played. That's not to say that he's good for another one, but you can't just allow the best NFL player on the planet who happens to play quarterback time to pick you apart, even if you don't have your number 1 running back and 2 of your top 3 receivers and Kelsey's off to a slow start. It doesn't matter. It's still Mahomes and Reed. I mean, Christ, didn't they throw some sort of it might have been Detroit. They threw like some sort of a pitch to an offensive tackle. Sorry, didn't mean to get confused on that. Show Mahomes something different. I would rather go down swinging aggressively than lose to the Chiefs with more of the same defensive stuff. And run D, listen, they're averaging 118 a game. If you can keep them under 125, I think they got a good shot, and keep Mahomes under 30. Mahomes, again, not the most mobile or athletically mobile, but he has a knack for back-breaking, pocket-breaking runs that the Niners need to be aware of. And he's not a Lamar or a Kyler Murray or a Jaden Daniels where if you send 6 at him, he has that laterable, quick twitch ability that he can get away and make you pay. Can he get away? Sure. The chances of him getting away against 5 or 6, I think, are lower than him getting away with just a 4-man rush. And this is dependent on gap integrity and rushing the right way and not rushing past him, all that good stuff. And I mentioned Clyde Edwards-Helaire being activated. Is he going to play? Because then that gives you, or the Chiefs, a receiving option out of the backfield that Hunt and Carson Steele don't really present. Samaje Perine to a certain degree, but Helaire a little bit, more so. Passed offense for Kyle. How aggressive is he going to be? And are the Chiefs going to be as aggressive defensively without L'Jarius Sneed at corner? Trent McDuffie, still a Pro Bowl All-Pro player. They don't have that same bookend corner this year. How aggressive, the formula that Spagnuolo cooked up against the Niners in the Super Bowl worked. And now the Niners are without McCaffrey. Does Spagnuolo just play them straight up and not blitz as much and say well, we know your halfbacks, your running backs coming out of the backfield are not going to be nearly the threat. So do they play a little more zone? Do they play man but not blitz Purdy? It's going to be an interesting chess match between the two. But is the counter to that then forcing those check downs to Mason, to Guerendo, to Juice, to Patrick Taylor. Remember, 5 running back catches last week against Seattle needs to be part of the offense. How much are they going to push it downfield? You know, the Chiefs have a good defense. Their pass defense is statistically worse than their run defense, and Brock Purdy leads the NFL in completed air yards with 1,057. That's 200 more than the quarterback who's right behind him. Yak, yards after catch, run after catch, hasn't been there. Purdy is pushing the ball downfield. I'm sure they're going to keep doing that if the shots are there. But will they play a bit more conservatively or judiciously in terms of taking what the Chiefs give them, in terms of getting the ball out more quickly when the Chiefs send blitzes? They're going to blitz at some point, and Spagnuolo does a great job of disguising it, stunting, sending McDuffie, sending a safety, sending a linebacker. And this year, the Chiefs have only generated 9 sacks. That's less than 2 per game, right? Are they going to get to Purdy? Sure. I can't imagine the Niners keeping Purdy completely clean all game, but Purdy's mobility is going to be another aspect of the game to stay ahead of the chains, keep the chains moving, make a 2nd and 10, a 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5. Let's limit that running behind the line of scrimmage shit unless it's absolutely necessary to evade a pressure. You know, if you can pick up some yards, great, but more quickly throw it away, right? Or first, second read aren't there. Third read isn't there either. You're getting through your progressions. Make your decision and go. I said last podcast, north, 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 not north, south, not south, west, east, then north, 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 north. Keep the pressure on Spagnuolo and the Chiefs defense, knowing you're thinking like, shit, you know, now I got to account for his legs too. The Niners didn't account for Mahomes' legs, 9 for 66 in the Super Bowl. Let's flip the script and have I don't think that's going to be Brock's stat line, but if he can be 4 for 30, you know, it's a good place to be. And Kyle, force feed all your playmakers. Kittle was an afterthought in the Super Bowl. It can't be that way. And was either Travis or his brother saying that the Niners offense, they were interviewed in the offseason, the Niners offense runs best when it runs through Kittle. Well, I don't know with McCaffrey out who the offense actually runs through. Do we know? Is it Mason by default? Because yardage wise, he's having the best season thus far out of Mason, Ayuk, Debo, Jennings, and Kittle. So is this going to be a run-based game plan by Kyle? And if that's the case, can we please get to 35 or more? But Kittle's dynamic. And I don't know, you know, when we think about the Super Bowl, we think about them playing man-to-man or press man on the receivers. Can we really say, going back looking at the film, that they were doing that to Kittle? Right? Are they playing press man with a safety or a linebacker on Kittle? Probably not. They're probably playing zone behind man outside with corners. So if that's the case, a Kittle, a Juice, a Saubert if he's in, a Mason out of the backfield, a Guerendo, that could be there. Are they going to focus so much more on the outside weapons that it leaves your inside underneath stuff open? I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm not one that's breaking down the all 22 by like some other people out there, and God bless them that they do. And a lot of them have a lot of good insight. But if we're going to, I hate to say if they're going to flip the script on Kansas City by maybe giving Mahomes different looks or blitzing or whatever, they're going to need to do something differently than what they did in the Super Bowl, just based on the fact that McCaffrey's not here, right? And if Jordan Mason, and again, I hate to advocate for like, you know, shoot up that shoulder so you're numb, but if he gets hurt, then it's uh-oh time, right? Because, you know, trust me, bro, Grendo's going to be a baller. One big run. Are we going to trust the Guerendo, Patrick Taylor, and Debo get some carries too? But and I said this last podcast, could they throw running backs at waves at the Chiefs? Yes, the Chiefs are allowing under 90 yards a game. They're top 5. I think the Niners will run for over 100, but can they really batter that front? Because running the ball sets up play action, and running the ball slows down the pass rush, right? Whether it's 4 or 5 or 6, whatever Spagnuolo is going to dial up. The Niners may see some 5 or 6 man fronts, Will Kyle allow Brock to check out of it? Check to something quick? Play action to something quick? And I know that sounds a little odd because play action is usually a more long developing type of play. But the Niners should have the mentality of being the bully and battering the Chiefs and running it down their goddamn throat and not stopping Kyle when it's working. Not getting away from it. It wasn't a shootout, right? It was 22-22. No, it was 19-19 at the end of regulation in the Super Bowl. And this Chiefs offense is on par with last year's offense in terms of the playmakers they have or don't have. Mahomes so far this year. And yes, Andy Reid is getting the extra week to prepare. But you don't have to beat the Chiefs throwing it 36, 38, 40 times a game. You don't. Look at the film of what Harbaugh did and the Chargers. You can beat the Chiefs maybe in a low-scoring game if your defense, steps up. And they got the talent individually to do it. Run the ball control. Make plays with the passing game when you have to or need to. But I swear to fucking God, if he comes out the first 3 plays passing, I'm going to lose my shit. Establish the goddamn ground game and pass off of that. Slow the game down. Be efficient. And Brock was efficient in the Super Bowl. He really was. I had the one touchdown pass, threw for over 60, over 64% of his passes completed. Mahomes is Mahomes. Mahomes got the touchdown when they needed to. Spagnuolo prevented the Niners from getting first downs and touchdowns when they not necessarily needed to, but wanted to, right? The end of the fourth quarter wasn't a need to get a first down because they were able to get the field goal. But they stopped them there, and they stopped them, obviously, with that unblocked Chris Jones rush on Purdy. And for everybody out there that thinks we're saying, we didn't have Dominic Puny last year, and we didn't have Feliciano, and Burford was in. It's a lot of expectation to put on Dominic Puny to be the Chris Jones stopper. He's still a rookie. If the line can communicate and man up block or zone block to a point where they're being able to pick up the rushers, and especially rushers that have the most immediate beeline to Purdy, they'll be okay. But he's not the savior. He's not the savior of the O-line. Trent Williams has got to have a cleaner game than the Super Bowl. He had multiple penalties. If the Niners don't turn it over at all, they have a really good chance of winning. But getting to that 30, 35 runs, feed it to Mason 20 times. Feed it to Garendo 5 to 8 times. Debo's going to get 3 or 4. Brock may get 3 or 4 carries. I didn't put Patrick Taylor on this because I doubt he's going to get a carry, but even throw Patrick Taylor in there. If you feel like you can lean on the running game to wear down that D-line and slow down a rush, do it. Kyle has a lot of confidence in Brock. Brock has a lot of confidence in himself. This is all great things, and I keep saying I commend them for pushing the ball down the field. But the formula for this team to win is to run the ball effectively, run the ball more than 30 times, and pass it less than 30 times. Down in distance, penalties, if you have a 3rd down and 12 or a 1st and 15 or 2nd and 15, it might change what you're going to do, right? It may change the play call. Playing a clean game, they're not going to have no penalties, but let's not have stupid, horrendously untimely penalties that back them up, right? Make 2nd and 5, 2nd and 15. Lean on the run, push the ball when it's clearly there, but take what the Chiefs are getting you and protect Brock. If the Niners play a clean game, minimal turnovers, they're going to have, minimal flags. They're going to have penalties and no turnovers, or they win the turnover battle 2-1, 1-0. They have a really good shot of winning. And this isn't Homer optimism. I'm going to take the Niners 23-20 because it's illogical. It's illogical for me and to me, it's illogical in a weird way. That's why it's going to happen, because we don't think I think a lot of us in 2019 thought the Niners were going to win the Super Bowl. In last year, thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. In 2022, at home, thought they were going to beat the Chiefs. I don't know how many people actually think the Niners are going to win this game, even though some sports books have them favored by a point and a half. They're a 3-3 team with a whole lot of injuries. One more time, it's McCaffrey, it's Hufanga, it's Javon Hargrave, it's Dre Greenlaw, Yatura Gross-Matos, a lot of questionable folks, but the Chiefs have those injuries as well. Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, Charles Omenihu. But they're a 5-0 team. They haven't looked ridiculously impressive. It feels like, hey, until the Niners find a way to beat the Chiefs, we should just keep taking the Chiefs, keep taking Mahomes. You don't bet against Mahomes. I get all that. But it feels so weird that this is the game with really, for a lot of people, and a lot of Niner fans are hyped and like, we're going to get Mahomes and all this. But it feels like with the way the Niners have looked and the Chiefs being 5-0 and the Chiefs coming off a bye, that this is completely set up for the Chiefs to win again. But in a weird and illogical, I'm not going to say pressure-free way, because we are all going to be into this game. But what if the Niners actually get a win against their AFC nemesis in a game and a situation where we really don't think, not that they don't have a chance, but that this year doesn't feel right. It feels like 2020. Chiefs are going to come in, they're going to win, they're going to do the things that the Chiefs do. For whatever reason, the inverse of that feels right to me. San Francisco 23, Kansas City 20. And they use the phrase, someone, was it Warner or Trent Williams or someone, used the phrase, get the monkey. We got to beat the Chiefs and get the monkey off our back. Another throwback to 1994. The Niners got the cowboy monkey off their back, but more importantly for Steve Young, they got the Super Bowl monkey and the Joe Montana shadow off his back in beating the Chargers. 30th anniversary of that Super Bowl team. I believe in signs. There are some there and illogical stuff that I just mentioned in the prediction, 23-20 Niners. That concludes the 49ers Plus podcast for this week. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Between now and then, Major League Baseball playoffs, Mets, Yankees, hockey starting, NBA preseason, WNBA finals, I think are still going on. Whatever you are doing this early fall, enjoy it. Enjoy the Niner game. Hopefully it goes the way we want it to. But overall, remember, be happy, healthy, and safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.